Good morning, everyone. My name is Lily Eriksen, and I work at the Department of Commerce, Office of Economic Development and Competitiveness. And today I'd like to talk about an initiative called the Washington Opportunity Network and our TA landscape report that was funded in part by the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And I would also like to thank OneEastside for their valuable help and assistance in creating this survey, and also to our contractor who helped put many hours into this, Teresa Thomas Massengal, right there. So if you want to ask a little more nuanced questions, she'll have all the details that I do not. So putting you on the spot, Teresa. So the Washington Opportunity Network is part of this grant that we won, and it's really focused on small business financial ecosystems and really existing infrastructure that we already have in catalyzing new elements to overcome the gaps that we see in the system. So we're really trying to solve for those businesses farthest from opportunity that need money but maybe don't know how to go about it, and funders that need to give money but don't really know how to reach those businesses farthest from opportunity. It's really focused on that private investment part and also leveraging what the state has in their resources to be able to help drive that investment. So we did this TA landscape report to really see about the capacity of the network, how much is needed and where. And then we actually have wrapped up our investor landscape study so we know who's ready to invest and how. So we really focused on businesses, small businesses, and we define those as 10 employees or smaller with 100K in revenue. We surveyed 120 TA providers, by and for leaders, and then we also interviewed folks as well on their real life experience. And then what we found was that, surprise, surprise, the big points are we need time, trust, and technology. So to have effective TA, we typically saw a TA provider giving 40 to 80 hours per business for full wraparound services. And they must be available when business owners need them. Often that's at 10 p.m., right? When all of a sudden you start panicking about what you need in your business, nights, weekends, not during hours of operation of your small business. We also found trust was really key, especially for those businesses farthest from opportunity, needed long-term involvement, commitment to the community, being in the community, and being able to offer linguistically and culturally relevant services, right? It's not effective for me to walk into a Hispanic business and help them get what they need, right? Because I did not grow up speaking Spanish and I did not grow up Hispanic. So I'm not able to offer services in the way that they need them to be able to get them to be the most successful that they can be. And then we also found technology. Many businesses lack hardware or software to be able to, grow in an e-commerce environment. And there must be some effort into building digital literacy and basic computer skills in online retailing. So Commerce has a program called the Small Business Resiliency Network. Many of these are in the room today, so thank you guys. They serve a lot of these small businesses, and they're really by and for providers. So as we said, we interviewed 120 individual service providers, and then we also did some review of business, trade, and academic literature. So I've talked about some of the outcomes, but the other things that I want to mention are that when equitable access is offered, the potential for economic impact is kind of exciting. It can go wherever we want to go. The more we can do this, the more we can grow. And then we also found that women-owned businesses grew 3 times faster than all businesses over the past decade. And then we also found that firms owned by women of color grew at double that rate. So there's a lot of potential here if we focus on serving these businesses. So what did we find? The business services that are provided are on your left. And what we found was that the need is acute, and it's really a wraparound service of access to capital, financial services, and training technology that is needed. Really need access to capital. And only 50% of the TA network that we interviewed was offering these wraparound services of access to capital, financial services, and training and technology together. So there's really a need for that to happen. And then the possibilities are endless. How are these services being provided? What we saw was 84% is online live content and 80 is in-person one-on-one. This is really impressive that the network was able to pull this off, especially during COVID. But this is what is needed to really give good technical assistance. The personal relationships are really, really crucial, that trust to actually be able to get a business to where they need to go. And then, it's really the access to that one-on-one is really constrained by time of the small business owners. And so this is a really good finding that we found. And so kudos to all of you. The other top need is language. So what we see on your right is what Washington State looks like. So we're the third most linguistically diverse state. We have 163 languages spoken in Washington State, and 27% of the population live in a home where language other than English is spoken. So this means our services also have to be quite just as diverse. And so we see obviously that 100% of services are offered in English. It's not a big surprise there. But we're also seeing that 30% is also being offered in Spanish. The one thing that I will mention about this slide is that it doesn't necessarily go into detail about how these language services are being provided. Is it somebody who actually can speak the language, who's available 40 hours a week, or they're only available 10 hours a week to help a business? Or is a TA provider relying on some translation services to be able to serve some of these businesses that don't speak English? So there's some other municipality or government or individual could go in and try to study this further, because I think this is really a data point that we need to understand a little bit better to understand what we can do to serve small businesses. The other top line is, are businesses being reached? What we see on the right is that this is kind of the goal of business or of TA providers. We see what their goal is to serve. And so we see that there's a high goal to serve some of our BIPOC communities. However, what we found was, while that was a goal, typically those businesses were actually not one of the top 3 communities the TA provider was actually able to reach or serve. So that really goes back to that need for TA to be culturally and linguistically available, right? You need to have people on your staff who are able to speak the language and come from the community that they're hoping to serve. So while it's really great that folks are trying to serve more diverse populations, it really also goes down to the staffing level and the availability of those people to serve. The other thing that we found was, are the capital needs being met? And so often a lender requires that a borrower shows management capacity, business track record, and the ability to generate income to pay back the loan. What we did find was that some of these some of these TA providers were doing a lot of referral, and then only about 55 were providing capital directly to businesses that they were also doing technical assistance. So this is just an interesting kind of data point. I think you can make an argument either way about whether or not a technical assistance provider should also do both, or if it's valuable to have different, this kind of diversity in what TA providers are providing. Okay, my last kind of top line is, how is TA being provided? And I really want to kind of direct your attention to this by and for technical providers. So those providers that are offering services to the community that they come from, and they're in culturally relevant and linguistically in the language that the community speaks. And so what we see is that they're actually quite vulnerable to government budgeting, right? So they rely heavily on government funding and for fee for service as well. And so when we're thinking about the investor landscape, right, really looking at the trying to boost how we can support a by and for network of TA providers. So thank you very much.